Thank you so much for joining us. This is one of the joys of organising or helping to organise this event with a big team, wasn't just me. It's been able to put together dream panels, and this is my dream panel. And I had to just calm myself down because I feel like I've come on stage with some friends because I've just got to get myself composed because all of these women I have fortunately worked with three of them very closely and admired one from afar, and they're all just so amazing at what they do, and how they have done that is by obviously being very brilliant, but surrounding themselves by great women and creating these fabulous communities. And so you see obviously their names are above, but just very quickly we have Jane at the end, we have Vanessa, we have Marielle, and we have Kate. And the conversation we're having today is basically about networking, which is really, really important. But I know when I was first starting out as a journalist, I don't know if any of you have had this, but it's drummed into you about contacts. And, you know, one editor even said to me, you're only as good as your contacts. But that exchange sort of feels kind of very old-fashioned and not very right for now. And that's because the future is building a community, and it's having women around you, and that exchange of you give me something, I give you something feels very crude and very old-fashioned. And so what these women are brilliant at doing is creating communities and building their businesses and their brands through supporting other women. And so I want to start off with you, Marielle, because Wise Women, I have to say I'm wearing one of Marielle's dresses today.
Thank you.
I love them. But can you talk us through a little bit what happened on the last day in the office before lockdown? Because it was such a pivotal moment for you, wasn't it?
It was. I think it was February. I can't remember. End of February 2020. And we had to lock up shop and go home, and I looked at everybody and said, you know, that's it. Who knows where we'll be 6 weeks from now? And so I went home and I took a rail of clothes home because I might as well, had some things to wear, and I put them up and I turned my telephone on myself, switched Instagram on and put live on, and just basically said to the customer or the consumer, whoever was willing to watch us at that point, there wasn't so many, and said, what do you think? And I held up a grey T-shirt or a gold dress or whatever it was, and they said, I love it. And it might have been 3 or 4 voices, but within a very, very short space of time, we kind of became a television channel, I think.
From your kitchen.
And our Instagram lives were just to communicate. Plus, during lockdown, obviously everyone was, you know, homebound. So we had this opportunity to speak. And it was a conversation that we've never left behind, basically.
And it's actually been hugely important to you, hasn't it? Because it has enabled your business to grow. I mean, you now have a store on Marylebone High Street. You're about to open another one. Because you've had that big community. Did you have it before, or did you have it on such a big scale?
A bit, but not at all to the same degree. And I think that it taught me very much that we always think about the customer, but we don't actually ask. So if you say, what do you think? Well, they're going to tell you. and I think they have every right to, because and it makes the whole thing more efficient. I mean, it's not an A to B situation, but you have a conversation, and so they make you think about things more efficiently and more effectively, and I think it just dilutes into the design a little bit, really.
Kate, you had a similar experience, didn't you? Because obviously, those of you who are aware, SmartWorks is a fantastic charity, but it dresses women to help them get back into the workplace and celebrates the power of clothes. But lockdown, suddenly the women couldn't come into your office anymore.
Yeah, no, that's right. It was a really traumatic time, actually, wasn't it?
It was.
And we had to make lots of quick decisions about what we were going to do. So, at SmartWorks, the whole ethos of our charity is that women can come in, we use clothes, work with her to dress her and make her feel great about who she is. We couldn't have that personal connection, so how do we then keep our community alive? So we did. We moved very quickly to virtual dressings, virtual coaching, and it gave us that incentive, I think, to really innovate, which is we might not have done otherwise, and ended up creating a product, essentially, virtual dressing and coaching, that we still do now, and it means women can access our service without having to come into our centre.
Hugely helpful.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, many of you might recognise Jane at the end from Trouble at Topshop and the recent BBC documentary, which I'm obsessed with. She's hugely important to the success of Topshop. But the one thing that you talk about, Jane, in the documentary, which really resonated with me, was when you decided to put together your dream team, when it was at the height, when it was amazing. I mean, I'm so nostalgic. I just miss Topshop so much. You recognised your skills and what you were good at, but the important thing is you also acknowledged the things you weren't good at and brought in those people who were good at that. And I think that's a really valuable lesson for all of us, because when you are at the top and you are the boss, there is that tendency to think you know everything, but the skill is recognising what you're not good at.
Yeah. Well, no, I actually realised I was actually not good at most things. I knew I was actually quite good at this little tiny sort of sliver of sort of perhaps branding and product, but I realised that I just could not do any of these other things. And I also realised very quickly that people are so different, and that you need your team needs to be built up of people who are completely different to you in many ways. We had something really, really strong that bound us together, and it was this incredible vision that we all bought into and we all felt was the right thing. And the vision actually was to be the global fashion brand. And we had this vision, 25 years ago or something, when we absolutely were not the global fashion brand. But we thought, well, let's have something that we can all really kind of strive towards and that we all believe in. And then it was a question, of finding people who were extremely good at things that I was extremely bad at, and that together we would create this incredible sort of world-beating team of people who, and it's about not being threatened by other people's skills and recognizing that they are much better than you are, but also recognizing that together you can be so powerful. And it's funny, because when I was at Topshop, I was surrounded by all these incredibly talented women. I think the buying office was something like 150 very, very talented women. Then I had all of the women who worked in the stores who were equally brilliant. And I actually felt no need for what as you say, used to be called networking. And I didn't do it at all. I just thought, why would I need to talk to anyone outside Topshop? This is my family. This is us. This is what goes on. And it was only when I left that I suddenly felt like I wanted to just talk to everybody who phoned me up. Everyone who phoned up and said, do you want to go for lunch? I was like, yes, we can go. And I kind of continued that, and I still do it now. When anyone sort of contacts me or phones me up and says, and they've got something relatively interesting to talk about, I'll say, okay, let's do it, because you never know.
Well, they say don't ever say no to the offer of tea, do they? Or wine, even more importantly, wine. But
exactly.
And that is such a lesson, isn't it?
But I think that's a female thing, much more so that men have their established sort of old boys clubs and what have you. And I think women are a little bit more generous with their time and with their energy, and that we're quite happy to sort of, to talk to each other, to help each other if we can do. Yeah. And I love that. I think it's wonderful.
Vanessa, We Are the City, you work on the basis with your team of trust, and I liked this, you do not seek permission. Can you explain a little bit about how that works and how you operate with your team? Because I just think it's amazing.
So I think this is in relation to, We Are the City, free resources for women that kind of want to drive their own careers. But I've got a team of all women, and I think we were discussing, what that dynamic kind of looks like. And when I think back to my own corporate days, kind of how we were managed, which was more kind of stick than it was kind of carrot. But in terms of my own team, all of my team kind of mums, they've got kids and they work part-time. I don't think anyone works full-time. But we have this kind of thing around no permission salt. And this means no permission in terms of your ideas, unless they're really big and they're going to cost us a fortune, or they might go horribly wrong. But no permission in terms of, I'm going to the doctors, or I need to leave early, or do you mind if, I start work? I don't want to have those conversations. I trust my team. And that trust leads to them being more innovative. It leads to them being happy, kind of working for us. So I think in relation to that, I think companies that are trying to get organisations back into the workplace at the moment and are saying everyone's kind of got to come back, I think you guys hold the power to that anyway, because they can't force you back. But, I mean, also just the different environment that you go back to and different leadership styles. Just on that point about leadership, leaders have had to adapt. You know, they can't micromanage you anymore. We're managing people through Zoom calls and stuff like that. So, you know, if anyone can take anything away, if you are a leader, you know, leading without having your staff seek permission leads to a much more fruitful and a much more joyful kind of working environment.
Yeah, because people have pride in their work. You know, I think there was historically there's been, you know, Anna Whitehouse has been amazing at launching the Flexi Peel, but I think people think, oh, you're at home, so therefore you must just be watching telly and not doing it. And lockdown proved that people are at home, but they're actually really working because they have pride in their work, and we forget that, don't we?
But why shouldn't you be able to put a wash on while you're on a conference call? What is so bad about that? Many, many years ago, I remember I worked for a tech company, and there was not enough space for us to be on site, so I actually worked from home. This was, my kids must have been Mia was about 3, and I was going on a conference call, and I've done the mother thing. I'm quite proud of it. I put her in front of a video of tweenies or whatever it was at the time. I give her a full bag of sugary sweets, no judgment, and said, fill your boots. Mummy's going to go on this call. And I went on the call, and at that particular moment, she'd had far too much sugar. She started to do an aeroplane impression, kind of coming up the hallway. And it was like, is that your child, Vanessa? And when I think back to that, I should have gone, yes, it damn is. And she's sugar-high, and she's watching the tweenies. At the time, I didn't. But nowadays, like, I talk to people, and sometimes there was a lady on my call a few weeks ago, and she said, oh, excuse that noise, my child's outside having a bit of a meltdown. I'm like, can you go get your child, please? Put your child on your lap. Let's talk. You know, it doesn't matter if a dog runs in or anything like that. So I just think we need to adapt the way that we work.
I agree. Now, Jane's features in the Telegraph today, some of you might have seen, talking about this new theory that obviously is not new, and we all know it, but it's finally been recognised that a woman should act like a woman in the workplace and not that old-fashioned should act like a man. And you give a great anecdote of when Sir Philip Green was being particularly nasty, and you would come out and sort of hug your team and go, come on, we're better than that. And you did shout at him in the room, but then walk out. And how do you manage big personalities when you are leading a team? And
you see, I'm not convinced actually that what I did was the right thing to do.
I think it probably was.
I mean, Philip Green was a horrible bully. I mean, you all know that. And I recognised I was very lucky to begin with, because I was quite successful when he bought Topshop. So I had something to fall back on a little bit. But I also recognised very quickly that bullies really only respond to bullying, you know, themselves. That's what they're like, you know. Otherwise, they're just horrible people, and they just grind you down, and you know. And so I realised very quickly that I would have to put an act on. So every time I saw him, I would just pretend that I was a really horrible bully, and I would slam my fist on the desk, and I'd shout out, and I'd say, "Do not do that, Philip." And he'd like be a bit like, "Ooh." At one point, he actually said to me, I said, "You're such a bully, Philip," and he said, "I'm not a bully. You're bullying me." I mean, how pathetic is that? Anyway, so I kind of did put on an act as if I was, you know, squaring up to him, and then I would come back to my team, and we would all put our arms around each other and go, "It's okay, we can do this." So I don't know. In a way, perhaps I wasn't I should have used more of my female wiles or whatever with him. But I didn't know how to. This is the only way I knew how to get my way and to get him to back off, you know, because I just thought there's no way we can run this business if he's going to be constantly, like, you know, trying to get in. So I had to kind of just fight him off all the time. I'm sure you've come across people like this. I mean, the world is full of awful alpha males who think they can treat you like shit, don't they? You know.
I was talking to Trini about this earlier, about being the face of a brand and how much you should give of yourself. And Marielle, we've spoken about this at length, because having brought the camera into your kitchen, you are the face of the brand. And in some ways that's great, because you look fabulous in the clothes and you are very supportive. But when people see a response on social media, and 90% of the time it is you, isn't it, responding?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
What sort of pressure does that put on you when you're running a business, when you are so front-facing?
You never put your phone down. So you get that opposite thing of the kids saying, put your phone down, which is a bit ironic.
Reverse.
Yeah, so role reversal. I think that, it's the most wonderful thing, and it can at times be the most difficult aspect as well, because you are so open. But I think you have to really appreciate what it brings more than anything else.
Yeah.
And I think the whole thing about community is, and the whole thing about networking, and what I've been thinking sitting here, is that people talk about what is networking? It's like, I need to know so-and-so. Well, I need to create my own network. So I think the power of talking and presenting is that you can just create your own network. So you just say, actually, you're really important, you're all really important, let's have a chat. And so that becomes your network. And so if somebody says you should know so-and-so and so-and-so, I'm like, I don't necessarily agree. I think we'll do it our way. Let's do it our way.
Yeah.
So actually there's no rules. And I think that by being the face of that, it's allowed me to do that. It's allowed me to create my own network. But it does come at a price in that you're
people
public.
tell you all your problems, don't they? And
they tell me all my... and it's so fascinating. You always get, I bought your gold dress, and then I did this, and then this happened, and then that happened. So I know so much about women's lives. And to be honest with you, we all have the same problems. They're just they're just different variations on a theme, basically.
all in a lovely dress.
And look good, and you'll feel much better.
That's the key to it. Vanessa, when people are starting businesses, and you obviously have the experience of seeing people at lots of different stages, what was the mistake that people make when they're first starting out?
I'd say not building a network. So because when you're first starting out, there's people that there'll be skills that you need, and there'll be people that you need to kind of help you along the way. When I left corporate after 25 years, I honestly thought I could run a business like that. I had all the skills. I'd done 25 years of service. There's nothing I don't know. And I was so wrong, from jumping to being the marketing person, no one to fix the printer, no
tech.
And I realised I'm absolutely useless at designing flyers and any form of imagery or stuff like that. I can't draw for toffee. There were so many things that I didn't necessarily know how to do. And when you first start off, you don't have the money to hire people. Yeah. Or you hire your cousins and your dad who can't draw either, So it's like just to kind of put bottoms on seats. And I did that as a business. When I first got investment, I hired up, put 9 people in the room. No one knew what they were doing. We had nothing to sell. It was an empty shop with no products, but it looked good. There were 9 in the picture. But that network is so important. And even in my corporate days, to your point earlier on, I didn't realise how important that network was. When I decided to leave corporate and focus on WeAreTheCity full time, I looked around at who my network was, and it was who came to me off the back of who my boss was. There was a few women's networks that existed at the time, but everyone kind of looked the same there, which is why we created WeAreTheCity. But for that, I had to go and face my own fears and go to all the different women's networks that existed to evaluate them, to put them on the website so that I could recommend them. And I literally walked in, and I always tell this story, I walked in, put my coat down, got a water, looked at the sea of women, put my water down, got my coat, and I went. And I did that 3 times.
But what, you were just nervous?
Just what was my story? What was I about? How do I enter a conversation? How do I leave a conversation where I don't say, I'm going to the ladies, and I don't come back? It's all things like that. And it took me a while to work out what my story was and to overcome that fear where I love talking to people. And the biggest thing I love is hearing that you need something I can help with. I know someone who can help you. Yeah. So I think going into it, and again, I'm with you, forget this word, not networking. We're just building a relationship. We do it if we got together in the loo. We do it at a bus stop. We do it in a shop when we're trying on clothes. Why do we have to wrap this big word networking and make it so fearful? Yeah. So my biggest advice, do your networking. If you leave today without meeting somebody that you didn't know, before, it's a missed opportunity on your part.
Kate, what's interesting about SmartWorks is you're building a team where there's lots of different skills. So you need someone who's good at accounts, you need someone who's good at communications, you need people who are good dressers. How hard is it to build a team? Because you've built it so much. I mean, I think you've built it from 1 centre to 8. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah.
And to do that, you really need to know the area, know the people. You've recently, as Newcastle is quite a new one, isn't it? And then, you know, they will operate in a very different way to how we do here. So what are your skills and what are you looking for when you're meeting people and building?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. And actually building on what Vanessa says, I think we mustn't underestimate how much you need to see where you are and recognise what community you need. So I'd worked in public affairs and marketing, and before I moved over into the charity sector full time, and essentially we're building an organisation, a structure that needs all those things you've talked about. But I looked around and realised, actually, I also need a totally different community around me.
Yeah.
And that's when I first met Vanessa. It was one of those amazing moments where I thought, actually, I spoke to a friend who said, I've done this thing, I need a support network around me, I need to talk to women's networks who can support us at SmartWorks. We need our community to know about us and understand who we are. She went, I know this woman. And that's when I first met Vanessa, and she put me in front of an audience of all the women's networks across the city. And for us, that was the most important thing you could have done at that time. And because I got to tell our story to this community who could then get engaged, because I did know what my story was, which is an excellent point. You do need to know what you're saying and who your community needs to be. But then you also need those people who are going to recognise what you're doing and see how they can help you. And I think knowing what resources you have available and who is around to help you is absolutely invaluable, because when you are starting out something, you don't have anything. You know, I am responsible for bringing, or I was, we now have a bigger team, but, you know, I was responsible for bringing in the milk and, you know, everything else so that everybody could have their very important cup of tea when they arrive at SmartWorks to be dressed. So, you know, you need to be able to do the detail, but you need this bigger community of people who can step in and say, you know, I can help in this way and I'm going to do this. And to be open to it as well.
Yeah.
And then to think, no, I brilliant, I'm going to say yes to that, even though it was totally terrifying. And I had to then go and, you know, talk about SmartWorks. And I didn't really know what SmartWorks was that much at that time. But kind of trust that you've got a vision and understand it enough to be able to go do it.
And when you're building something up and it's small and you know every aspect of it, like making the teas, I think it helps you be a better boss, because I've watched you dressing people and the women are coming in and you're doing it, and you know, and then the next thing you're coming and doing a big speech as a CEO. You know, it's really important that you are at the bottom going up, isn't it? And you don't ever lose sight of that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think for all organisations, I mean, the great thing about SmartWorks, my office is right next to our reception, and I always want it to be, because then I see all the clients coming in, I see our dressers,
and
I
they
hear
come
the
in
conversations.
and they leave and they're on a high.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It's really rewarding, isn't it?
People walk in feeling really nervous, and you know, they've got a job interview coming up, they're not really sure where they are, and they're met with a cup of tea. Jane dresses for us. We're very, very lucky. We have the most amazing volunteers. And you know, you'll tell it better, Jane, but you know, that kind of feeling of someone looking after you and putting you in clothes, and that magic moment where you look in the mirror, it's so important. But from a kind of tactical, strategic perspective, actually just to be, that's what we do. That's our core business, and I have to be near it and see it and feel it and understand it, so that lives through everything that we do. And I think I hope we will always be where our dressing and coaching happens.
Yeah, because it's the same for you, isn't it, Marielle? You know, you know what the clothes feel like, and I think obviously what's worth mentioning is what is so fantastic about your brand is that you have women of all different sizes, so you know exactly that something that might work brilliantly on you might not work on somebody, you know, someone else, and that's the key, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and I think that one of the things that happened through lives, doing Instagram lives, was that we connected much more closely with individuals, and then I got to see what clothes look like. So they'd send me pictures of them, and I was thinking, hold on, this really works, because all I ever see is it on a fit model and she's a certain size, but I need to see this on different shapes and sizes. So our customer we created this sort of brand ambassador thing where real customers, and they are real customers, present the clothes, and people of that size, shape, height, whatever it might be, relate much more easily to that woman because it fits them in a certain way. And it's great for us as a brand, because I'm constantly like, well, think about that woman, think about that woman. Because, you know, we're all different shapes and sizes, and it's wonderful.
Yeah.
But we need to embrace that.
Yeah.
And they teach you so much. So, yeah, it's a great...
Jane, you are the master of starting trends, but you see visions, and Jane was also CEO at Whistles, and, you know, we were talking earlier about Topshop and just how I really miss the jeans and, you know, all these visions you have. How important is it, because I know there are many people in this room who have a business in mind and that they want to set up, how important is it that you have a unique USP or that you have something, or is it a case of just having a vague idea and going in? How strategic are you when you're working somewhere?
I think you have to, I think the vision, this sounds really stupid, but I think the vision is the most important thing. I think you have to know where you want to go, what you are, where you want to go. And that has to be, I think that has to be really, really clear, because everything you do, every person that you employ, and literally everything that happens in your business, you almost have to look at that vision and say, right, okay, does this work with what it is that I'm seeing that this business could be? I'm currently working with my Wardrobe HQ, which is a rental business. So I kind of decided, after trying to make fashion so compelling, that I'd done some terrible damage to the planet in the meantime. So I kind of shifted to rental and resale. And it's the same thing. We're absolutely clear about where we are, what we want to achieve. And everyone who comes into the business, you know, they don't come in unless they share that vision completely, and want exactly the same thing that we want. So there's no need for sort of having to motivate people, as people are motivated by what it is that we want to achieve, where we want to go with this. Yeah. So I think that's really important. Yeah.
And this is going to go real back to basics, Vanessa, so humour me. But you have someone in the room, they want to start a business. What do? They're sitting at the kitchen table. What would you advise that they do?
First thing, some form of social media. Think about what you want to be called and go off and protect the brand. If you've come up with that amazing idea, you know, around what you're going to be called or stuff like that, just register the handles. That would be the first thing. The second thing, I think, is to, again, back to Jane's point, you know, thinking about what it is that you want to be. But you can start small. You can actually set a business up in 48 hours. You have a name, you order your business cards, you've got your social media there, you get all your friends to join, first of all, get your ambassadors out there. And if you're selling a product, like even things like on Etsy, and people laugh at this, right? Even during lockdown, I didn't know where WeAreTheCity would go or anything like that. I set up a little artificial flower business on Etsy. Like, literally spun it up in a day. So you can, I kid you not, I'm quite good as well. But you can, like, whether you make something or anything like that, I think longer term, you need to look at, obviously, what is the overall vision? What is the strategy, where I want to go? I would say that even for you, those of you who are sitting here thinking, I don't want to set up a business, if anything lockdown showed us, we all need multiple streams of income. Everyone should be thinking in that way. Nobody is safe in their working environments. Unfortunately, it's the way that it is. What could we do to generate... Sorry to put doom and gloom on it. What would you do to set up a little side hustle? You know, and what does that look like? I don't care if you make beaded necklaces and it brings you in a £5 a month. You know, that beaded necklace could be the next big thing if Harry Styles wears it. You know, so do you see my point here? Yeah. So I think, you know, first of all, think about what it is that you want to be. Get some form of social media. And then go to some of these things. It's a great opportunity for women in business. I know you're partnered with NatWest here, but, you know, the money that they invest into female entrepreneurs is incredible. But lots of different incubators and stuff, we can help with that. There's loads on WeAreTheCity.
I think what's really important as well when you're heading up a business is trusting your judgment, your own judgment. And that sort of does play a part in this community conversation, because I know, Marielle, when we spoke, you said it's great to have the community, but what you're careful not to do is to design by committee, because then you're losing that instinct which makes you so successful in the first place. How do you navigate that?
You go back to why you started the brand and who you are and what you think is lovely, and it's a bit of give and take, but in the end, your job is to lead and to say, actually, you know, I've seen enough of that. Let's try something different now, and change the tone and change the pace. So I think whilst there is this conversation, it's definitely not a design by committee in the end, because otherwise you just make you would never move on. So you have to move it on. You have to stay fresh, stay relevant. You always have to be a little bit a little bit bored by what happened yesterday,
Yes.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. Never get too comfortable.
So having a really good or not having a good concentration span is very
what have
good.
you got bored? What have
if
you
that
got
makes
bored
sense.
with and then moved on with very quick? Because
What do
you
I get
started
bored
off with
with?
jumpers, didn't you? That
Yes.
was your big thing, wasn't
Yes.
it? But obviously now there's so many different elements. I mean,
Oh,
your
I
team
think,
literally think,
maybe
she's
I
moved
think,
on.
let's all stop wearing dresses. Let's wear something, I don't know, let's wear a gold all in one. I don't know what it might be, but my job is always to think 2 steps ahead. I think as a founder, you have to do that.
Yeah.
You have to be bored by yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm totally bored by myself, just saying. But which is why I find people so, and I think community is all about questions and people, because they're so everybody has got their story. Everybody's got something to say, and it's fascinating.
I think at the end of the day, when you are the boss, it ends with you. So I want to ask each one of you how you sort of navigate that responsibility. So, Kate, it ends with you, doesn't it? And that is stressful. Do you not think about that, else you wouldn't be able to do the job? And how do you function?
No, I mean, I've got an amazing team. I've got a fantastic board, so I don't feel lonely particularly. But I think you do have to relish that moment when you take the decisions. And I think you have to know your vision, but you also have to know what you're doing fits in with that. And just as a slight counter to what Vanessa was saying, I mean, do try lots of things, but I think be careful what you get good at. We don't have forever. There's a limited amount of time and focus. And actually, I think SmartWorks has thrived because we are really good at dressing and coaching women for their job interview. And that's what we do. And actually, we own that. I do tell people not to do things quite a lot. So I'm saying, don't go off and do coaching. Don't go off and do those training sessions. Dress and coach women for the job interview. Look, 72% get the job within a month. This is amazing. We are doing something that nobody else can do, and we're really good at it. So our focus is to scale that. Yeah. I want as many women as possible to come and access that. So actually, for me, that's my driving motive. And you can see how that rings true for any business, right? You decide what you want to do and you stick with it. So I think there's that consistency, and I'm very sure that that's right. Yeah. So I don't find it that stressful because, if it's not answering that question and not allowing us to be able to do that, then we won't do it. Yeah. And that's my guide. That's my kind of North Star, really. And I think if you've got that and you can stay consistent to it, then actually the decisions come easily.
Vanessa, how hard is it to be a boss? Because you start off small, people start off small, and then it grows, and then all of a sudden you've almost taken on a different persona, aren't you? Because you have to. So how hard is it being the grown-up?
I don't really see myself as a boss. I'm very much part of my team. Sometimes I step out of that role to make important decisions. However, it's very much an equal playing field. I mean, my team, we're not particularly massive. There's, I think, 10 of us. Majority are women. But generally, we do whatever needs to be done. I mostly face the clients, relationship management. But we have a big tech summit on the 6th of December. I've been writing comms last week because everyone's busy. So I'm not too up the food chain to roll up my sleeves and get my hands dirty and do what needs doing. But I was like that in corporate. Anyway, but I think that's the best way.
It's part of your personality, do you think?
I think it's the best way with your team, because also I know little bits about how each of them operate. I don't know their job to the level that they do, and I respect them for what they do. They could step into my job, and that's where I need to get them to, so that I can be more strategic, so that I can step away. So they're starting to meet my clients, they're building their relationships. So eventually it doesn't always have to be, we need to talk to Vanessa, because that's not good for the business either. Everyone kind of needs their own place to shine. So it does get a little bit lonely at the top sometimes when you are making those critical decisions, when you know that those decisions could be the make or break or something that you're doing and stuff like that. But, you take a deep breath and you plan the mitigating circumstance if it all goes wrong, and then you just sit and you just go like that. There's no magic wand.
I want to address recognising when something isn't working and when you want to walk away. And Jane, you did walk away from Topshop. You recognised it wasn't working for all the right reasons because it didn't align with what you were about and your beliefs. But that's quite a brave decision to recognise that, isn't it? And how did you process it?
I don't know. I think everyone has their own values. Everyone has their own beliefs. Everybody, you know who you are. You know what you are. You know what you're going to put up with and what you're not going to put up with. And I suppose I don't know. I think I was in quite a fortunate position as well because we were still very successful. So I knew that I could probably leave there and go to somewhere else. But I got to the stage where I just thought, there's too much negative energy being spent every single day shouting and getting angry and doing this act and what have you. And it just isn't worth it anymore. And plus the fact he was getting closer and closer. He wanted into Topshop. And I just thought, I can't run this business with you. You know, if you want it, you run it yourself, but I'm going. And so actually it wasn't a hard decision at all. It was a really easy decision. It was just like, see ya.
And you went on to be CEO of Whistles, which went on to be hugely successful. Yeah. So you took your talent elsewhere, and I think that's...
And back to your point about it can be stressful. I'm extremely good at blocking. So if there's sort of really difficult things, I'm quite good at just blocking them out and not thinking about it. I know that I'm lucky in that because my husband's the total opposite, and he'll really agonize about things all the time. If you can block. It's really good, honestly.
What do you mean block? So what are you not thinking about?
You know, you've got something really, really stressful. Like, for example, when I took over Whistles in January of 2008, and then in August of 2008, there was the global financial crisis, and all of our backers went under. And I wasn't sure whether we were going to be able to pay the staff for the following month because we just didn't have any backing at all. And, I mean, that could just drive you to distraction. You know, it could be really stressful. But I think it's maybe naivety or stupidity or one or the other. But I managed to sort of just park that and just get on with doing what I knew that we could do and we had to do. To get us through
I guess it's a lesson in concentrating what you knew you could bring out fabulous and concentrate on the things you are, like Kate says, concentrate on the things that you are really good at, because that mental health, which was such a big conversation then, is more so now, is hugely important, isn't it?
Oh, God, yes. Yeah.
And saving
really,
your sanity.
Really important.
Which actually brings me on to you, Vanessa, with the work-life balance, because we had a long chat on the phone last week about, virtual working, and you were talking about how the amazing things you were able to create from home and why that should be continued, but at the same time accepting that there's a whole generation that need to be in an office learning. I mean, as a junior reporter, I learned how to interview because I was sitting next to somebody who was really brilliant at it. That wouldn't have happened if I was sitting in my bedroom. So how do you balance that, and how do you work that out with your team? And if you have someone on your team who is asking for that, or you want to ask it of your boss, what do you do?
I mean, for us, it's a small team. Where my concern is in corporate organisations, because, so for example, of my generation, we're now kind of, if I was back in corporate, I would probably be doing 2 to 3 days a week in the office. So you've got all these youngsters that, you're quite right, benefit from overhearing these conversations, watching how you operate, how you negotiate, how you deal with conflict, and then not getting the opportunity to do that. So I'm not saying, hybrid working isn't a good thing. I do worry, like I look at my own daughter, for example, who's 21, who heads into the world of work at some point next year. Where's she going to learn? Where's she going to, she wants to be a lawyer, where's she going to pick up, the value? So I think there is an element of, and maybe it's a generational thing, for us to pitch up and show up in some way. And whether that's through mentoring programs, whether that's through going out to schools or stuff like that, just to share that experience. Because we're going to have a completely different workforce based on that generation. So I just think it's really important that we're mindful of that, as I say, when you get to a certain level, it's quite nice to kick back. I did 25 years in the city, I paid my price, but if it was a case of I was still there, I know that I'd have a duty to that next generation to kind of bring them on. Yeah. So we just need to be innovative and look for different ways of doing it.
We've got some questions coming through. So there's one from Keisha. Any tips for how to strike up a conversation with an amazing woman you would like to mentor you at an event like this? It's a good question. Jane, what advice can you give?
Just go for it. Just come up, tell her that you've got this business you think is amazing, and has she got any time, or would she like to chat about it? I mean, I've had that happen to me thousands of times, and I love it. So nobody doesn't like it. Just do it.
I would just add, put a bit of structure around that conversation. So as much as she's saying, she's mentor you all, careful what you wish for, right? So it's not strong again. I think when you're approaching a mentor, it's much better to do it with structure. So say, for example, you want to be mentored on public speaking. So approach somebody that obviously demonstrates that skill, but to say, I'm interested in learning more about public speaking and to get better at it. Would you spend half an hour a month with me over the course of 3 months? And by the end of those 3 months, I'll find somewhere where I can demonstrate that skill. Because what your mentor's heard, I want to hear you, but it's time for me. So hold on, you need an hour and a half. Great, yes. I can do that in 2 months. It's public speaking. Yep, okay, I know what we're focusing on. I know what I'm going to bring to the table. See, I've got a measurement of success. I'm going to get to watch you do that in action and know that I've played a little part in that journey.
God, can you mentor us all?
She's great, isn't she?
So much better go with an approach. You will get a much more positive response rather than, I need a mentor. Why? Not quite sure. Okay, in which case we need a coach before you get to that point.
We have a question for you, Marielle. The audience member is anonymous, but thank you for your question. Loves your style and your approach. But what is your advice to founders who are private, hesitant about sharing their personal life online? You don't have your children. You don't do your children, do you? Or have you talk about your children?
My children have appeared in the background because they're making toast or what. Very similar to what Trini said. That sounded so familiar. You make the decision where you draw the line. Yeah. And very similarly to Trini as well, I don't bring in my partner. I just keep, the kids provide light, and it's up to you. It's up to you.
Yeah.
You can be much more selective than people think. They think you're being open, and you are being open, but you draw the line.
I suppose there's a skill to it,
you really
seeming
do.
To be giving more than you actually
you really
are.
do. You're very open, and but there's a moment.
A question, 2023 is going to be a challenging year for businesses due to the recession. So how do you politely tell your team that they have to step up or you won't be able to pay them?
Just like that.
Yeah. I was going to ask you that one question.
That's the best question.
How you are at sort of front facing in terms of you're dealing with it day in, day out of women trying to get work. How do you sort of then be supportive to your team? And
I think it's a great question. I think you've kind of answered your own in a way. I think it's really important to be direct and honest with people, but it's a responsibility that everyone has in the team. We know what we're doing. To your point, we see every day the impact that the wider economic situation's having on people. So that does fire you up, but you need that sense of purpose about what you're doing. I think it's very important to have that in your team. But you need to be realistic too about what's possible and how you deliver things. So I'm quite open in how I deal with things and how I talk to the team. I think it's all of our responsibilities to know what we're doing. I think you've got to share numbers. We're a charity, but that doesn't mean we're just running on burning money or not having the money, whatever it is. We have money coming in, we have to spend it wisely. And that's the thing that everyone should be aware of. They should be aware of where the money's going. So it shouldn't be a surprise that, guess what, we haven't got that much money coming in. So we need to then think carefully about what that is. And I think that kind of transparency and openness is really important.
You have a question from Jade. What advice would you give to someone with far too many ideas that can never commit to one, with multiple skills and not able to focus? Jane, you have gone on to do lots of brilliant things since you've left Whistle.
That's a really hard question.
I know, sorry, I feel like I'm directing my but what makes you choose to do something? Because I imagine you have lots of calls asking for you to be an ambassador for the brand. And how do you decide?
I think you really need to think about what it is that you could be good at. Yeah. What your actual skills are. What are the things that you're really, really, really good at, and not the things that you would quite like to try, but you haven't really thought too much about it. I mean, you have to be very serious with yourself about what you can do and what you can't do. And are you a really, really organised person? If you are, great, but you have to just think very carefully about what you can offer something. People will say to me, well, would you come and mentor me or whatever, or support this cause? If I don't feel I can give any value to it, then there's absolutely no point in me wasting my time or their time, even having the conversation. If I think, like, take SmartWorks. SmartWorks for me is perfect. They came to me when I was at Whistles. They wanted donations. From there, I've started dressing for them, and I talk about them or whatever. But that's because that's what I'm good at. You know, I love clothes. I'm good at dressing people. So why not do that? But I think you have to be quite honest with yourself.
Yeah.
Yes.
Caroline, can I just say that there was one piece of advice that one person gave me once, which I thought was brilliant on this subject. They said, when you think about a new career, for example, which is what happened to me, they said, think back to what you loved to do as a child. And I can't draw and I can't design, but I used to sew clothes and make all my own clothes, and that is what this is tapping into. And it was a brilliant piece of advice, because then it's my happy place, is literally sewing.
Yeah.
And so that was a great piece of advice. Go back to what you loved as a kid.
Well, that seems like a good way to end today's session. Please join me in thanking the panellists who have been brilliant.